it's great to see all of you assembled here. I feel particularly humbled because I did speak in this event 20 years back. And it is amazing that the event is going from strength to strength in the last 20 years. And we have some amazing visitors, including, I think you all should give a big hand to Professor Tony Wasserman, who is here. He's even senior to me, and he has come all the way from CMU West Coast. Thank you. So my talk is very simple. What I want to communicate particularly to the younger members in this hall and people who are watching on the screen is that a time has come for India to become what I call the uploading nation. So let me kind of tell you, this is how my talk will be. I will kind of talk for about 30 minutes. That will probably leave about 10 minutes for questions. And so I will start with a little context setting and roughly kind of run over. And the key messages I want you to remember: open source has stabilized, matured, and ready for takeoff in India. Second is open source is moving beyond software. Okay. Third, I think a time has come. I think all of you assembled here, sub 50 age group, you all should take a vow that in the next 1 year you will contribute to open source. Okay, so that is what is the message I want to. So let me kind of start with this context setting. Once again, it is a kind of interesting that way back in 2000, I used to write regularly for Economic Times and Times of India. So I wrote a column and I got lots and lots of messages that they liked it and they resonated. And much of the content was very simple. Everyone was happy. You see, remember 1995, India, formally every Indian had access to internet only from 1995, to be precise, August 23, 1995. When BSNL started what is called consumer internet. Until that time, it was limited to education institutions like IITs, IAS officers, etc. So, by 5 years, so everybody was busy downloading. So the article went on like this. My wife is very happy because she could download recipes. The Swamijis are very happy because they can download Rigveda and Samaveda. And the CEOs are happy because they could get all their annual reports downloaded much faster. The professors are very happy because they could actually get whole course material, PowerPoint slides, what have you. They can download, so teaching became much easier. And much more important, our students felt very happy because any report they want, they could just download it. So I was the only lonely, unhappy man. Part of the reason why I was unhappy was that it is one thing to be downloading, but should we not upload? Should we not contribute to open source, because we do not have much contributions to open source then. In a slightly different context, India as a country, you all know, used to be run by economists in 50s, 60s and 70s. Slowly the techies and the larger scientists kind of got into the key decision making only from late 80s and 90s. Okay. So economists used to be busy. I kind of used to interact with some of them. And India was being classified as an underdeveloped nation. So slowly we were kind of moving into a developing nation. And of course these days, the Prime Minister talks of even India becoming a developed nation, etc. So I used to tell my economist friends, I don't want to get into this argument of underdeveloped, being developed, fully developed, etc. We are a developer nation. We are coders for the world, right? We are a developer nation. And then one of them asked me this question. You say on one hand you are a developer nation, but you are not contributing, you are only downloading. Okay? And afterwards we forgot about it. Just 2 years back, one of the CXOs of Cognizant, Ram somewhere tested something and then he wrote a LinkedIn post, I think May 12, 2020, saying that he kind of recalled my article. I don't know how he managed. And he said that, look, it is time that we start looking at this seriously. Can we become an uploading nation? Okay. So that is the key context. And what I am going to do in the next 20 minutes is to tell you that few things we have delivered. I'm not necessarily saying we are happy with what we have done. We have long miles to go. But nonetheless, we have done. And a few things that are working. And this is also the time where you don't really have to worry too much about what I call concept selling of open source. There was a time when open source got into, like many things, they get into the religious wars. For some reason, companies like Microsoft were not very kind to open source movement, etc. But all these things are now history. We don't have to waste our time. So today, open source is accepted. And what I am going to do now next in my talk is to give a lot of illustrations where open source is delivering today, delivering population scale today, delivering things day in and day out. And whether you kind of realize it or not, you are all consuming open source today. Anyone who uses a mobile phone, which practically no one is left who does not use a phone, is actually consuming some open source. That being the case, this is the time for us to get into this act. Okay? So, but I thought that some of you should also get, this advantage, sometimes a disadvantage for some of you who don't like it. I won't take too much time, but it is also good to give a historical perspective. So we all went to school quite early 60s, we went to colleges in 70s. Did our PhDs, etc. At that time, the word open source, for some of us, first time when we heard, was a little mysterious. Because source was open. Because all our PhD master thesis will have what are called program listings, which will actually have listing of the code as part of the appendix. So that is the tradition we come from. And, there used to be, some of you might have heard of it. I don't think any one of you would have touched it. There used to be a language called Fortran. And then there used to be compilers called Fortran compilers, one from Minnesota called MNF, one from Waterloo called WhatFor. So these are all the done things, right? And then there were huge libraries called International Mathematical and Statistical Library, the Numerical Analysis Group from UK. So these are all there. Okay, that was how we kind of grew up. But I think in 80s, Stallman started this free software movement. I don't know how many of you have met Stallman. He does something very interesting. He literally dances on the floor. Okay, and I have invited him. He did that even in Indian Institute of Science at the Jain Data Center. Okay, so Stallman had his own following. At the same time, he actually got on to everything should become free. That actually becomes difficult because people still have to make their money. But I think the open software, the open source became a more mature, more pragmatic, which realizes that some people have to make money also. And then we had lots of examples, like there was a time when there were no routers. For some of you youngsters, something called router did not exist. So we used to take a PC, put two cards, network cards, and put an open source software from MIT called PCIP. That was a router. So I actually built my router in my lab. This is how we did. Okay? And then of course, lots of the Linux came in a big way. And our own country, we had something called generalized Indian script terminal. Kannada font, Telugu font, Bangla font, etc. They were all done by CDAC. So we are kind of getting on. But I think the last 2 decades, we have completely changed. Every part of the OS, every part of the software's value chain, there is a dominant player from the open source. At the operating system, we know Linux. Programming languages, we have PHP, Python. Databases, MySQL, servers, Apache, browser, Firefox, Office called LibreOffice, and of course the everywhere present Android operating system. And of course there's a community, so many of them. GitHub is one community, there are other communities, right? So I think this is how we are today. Okay? And it's kind of humbling. So Rahul is somewhere there. Rahul, are you there somewhere? Where are you? Okay, do stand up. Give Rahul a big hand. Isn't it amazing that as an event, we are in the 20th version? And I am fortunate that Rahul continues to invite me. I was there for the session, first one, and Professor Tony Wasserman had attended a couple of session, three of the conferences. And I'm sure he will go to the 200th edition soon. Okay? But it is interesting. And through the thick and thin, we have stayed together. Open source did not get enough attention, did not get enough eyeball, did not get enough sponsors at some point in time. And then we also have been having this magazine, what used to be called Linux for You. I used to write some 2003. And those of you who do not know, thanks to his dad, EFY started, Rahul, correct me, 67 or 69? 69, okay, so way back from 69. So I think it is amazing that we are kind of, okay, and I tell you, we will just fill up this hall and we will fill up many halls in the years to come. Okay, so let me kind of talk of, I think it is also important, some of you might ask, you Sadagopan, you idiot, you keep on talking. Have you done anything? So I think it's a right question, so I should tell you I have done something. So, of course, I was talking since 1999, and in the Inside Institute, one of our colleagues, Professor S. Nagarajan, the distinguished engineer from HP, he used to be our adjunct faculty, and for 14 years, he taught this course as an adjunct faculty. 45 contact hours, he was coming physically, driving through the Bangalore traffic. Bangalore traffic has been bad all through, but he somehow managed to come. And this amazing SN could come. So thanks to SN, we did many things. So we actually hosted the Debian in India. Okay, and then the Debian expert group was there. And then this advanced operating system course, they used it, they built lots of them, starting from usual device drivers, etc., etc. And some of the student projects kind of made their mark. And that is something which I feel, and we did have a small number at that time of contributions. Okay, now over the years, we have, okay, and we also did a lot of open sourcing of our courses. We'll talk about some of the open courseware movement, etc., etc. So this is something at that time. But we continue to do something. And in the last 7 years, Dr. Tangaraju is here. Sir, do stand up. I want people to know you. Okay, thank you. And he has spent significant amount of time in Wipro, and he decided to kind of switch to academics. And he has been doing pioneering work in kind of, I think first and foremost, it is important to teach courses. And we also need to ensure that these courses get attracted by the students. A lot of times you teach a course, but there are nobody to take. And he has been fairly successful, and his students have been contributing. We'll talk about some of the contributions. And much more important, 60 of his students are registered, many of them online, for this. Okay, and you will find that some of them are around. So I think it is important, and I think two of his students, okay, one of his students is actually presenting something right in this conference. So that is something. And of course, there is a biggie, it needs separate attention, so I will kind of talk about it later. So since 2018, IIITB have been kind of driving it, so hosting what is called MOSIP. Okay, so it's interesting. And some of you would know MOSIP as a booth, you can actually go and see. You can talk to people, and Puneet is actually giving a talk, I think this afternoon or yesterday afternoon, again, okay? So I think this is happening. And I think what is kind of very heartening to me is slowly we are going beyond software also into some amount of hardware. So my colleague Dr. Madhav Rao has been doing a number of interesting stuff. He kind of contributed to the Square Root Library. And we are in NIMHANS. You all know NIMHANS is the National Institute for Medical Science. It's an amazing institute, and we have lots of things in common. We have a e-health research center of IIIT Bangalore, which to a large extent we are benefiting from NIMHANS. I think I will tell you a bragging point, because I personally feel very happy about it, because as a country, institutions in India, we have not worked together. There is a neurosurgeon who is a full professor in this institute. He actually conducts brain surgeries for his living. He is a registered PhD student. He is almost close to graduation in computer science at IIIT Bangalore. And he is working on robotic surgery. And only from him I realized that if you want to do a surgery in the brain, the robots have to be very different. So it should be like a small snake. It should go like this. Then only you can perform brain surgery. They have a patent on it. So, and more interesting stuff, we also built an exoskeleton machine, those who have a back pain. So it's a small little walking robot. See, if you have some of the people who have a bad back pain, you can't even get up. The only time you can get up is to have a nurse who will actually hold you and walk. But many people can't afford. So we actually made a machine. It's a robot which will learn from you, which will kind of walk with you. And it is being tested right in NIMHANS. And the design of that will be open source. Okay, thanks to Dr. Madhav. And we also have some chip level design. I have given references if you can just look at it. And I think Pramak's thesis. Okay, so again, some of the chip designs we are making it open source. Okay, so concept is Rahul. So I think do not have to think of open source software only from a software point of view. See, today I actually think hardware is condensed software. Right? So in a sense, the artificial division between hardware and software should go. I think that is what we are kind of seeing it. Okay? And of course, I have talked about it. So I think I will spend a few minutes on MOSIP. MOSIP stands for Modular Open Source Identity Program. Okay. So you all know that Aadhaar started in this country 2008, 2009 to 14. And thanks to Nandan Nilekani, it was a project that was delivered. So today everybody has Aadhaar. So we have 1 billion people having Aadhaar. So what was interesting was that it was developed as a software for the Indian government, paid for by the taxpayers' money, and it gave us a few things. One is population scale software can be done and run out of India. So that is the first step. Second thing was that in between 2009 and 2014, cloud had matured. When Aadhaar started, they benefited from, but they could not benefit fully from cloud. But today you can benefit. And of course, in 2008-9, software development process had not matured. Microservices architectures are not matured. So to some extent, Aadhaar could not fully benefit. So what happened was when 21st December 2017, the iSpirit folks walked into my office. And they said, look, there is a request from a lot of countries that we should create something, and but we can't give away our Aadhaar because of other reasons. So is there something which we can do? Out of that discussion, they were actually wanting to go and talk to an IIT, IISc and other institutes. They just came to take advice from me whether I can provide the connect. In the discussion, I realized that, I had worked a long time back with Unicode Forum and stuff like that. Our friends from Berkeley and MIT, I had kind of worked with them. So I had some feel for it. And sometimes you do some amazing, kind of interesting stuff. Foolhardy is the actual word. But sometimes, if you are successful, you are called visionary. Right? It was a foolhardy decision. I simply told them one word. You shall go no further. I said, IIIT, we will do it. Okay? And part of the reason is that the funding people, Tata Trust, BGMA, Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, etc. They kind of know me, and we also had FCRA, so it becomes easier for them to work on, etc., etc. And the high spirit fellows all know me, so they also had a comfort. And looking back, we have delivered. Okay, and you can actually see this. Okay, and part of the reason is that it was very clear it has to be done in Bangalore because there is no place like Bangalore. And sometimes small is a handicap, but sometimes small is a health. That's what happened. And so this happened to be the first time something like that happened. And it's also first time for any academic institute in India. So you can kind of read more details, etc. But let me give some numbers so that started as a project. And then what we do, there's a software, documentation, support. We also do a lot of ecosystem development. And we do have Krishnan Rajagopalan. Yes, please. Okay, so give him a big hand. He's one of the key members. And I think others may be there. And you're also part of the standards development. Okay, 9 countries have signed up. At least 3-4 countries have gone live. I may not have the latest numbers, but you can look up the web. But correct me if I'm wrong. We have at least delivered 40 million, more than 40 million IDs have been generated. 100 million. Okay, so it's 100 million. Almost 100 million IDs have been generated. Okay, so that is something. So what I'm saying is, grounds up, developed, delivered, supporting multiple countries, and then overall acceptance. And then we are also now. So what happens is, thanks to Mosaic, the digital public goods, digital public infrastructure is something which is being talked about in several communities around the world, including the likes of UNDP, UN, World Bank, etc., etc. And with no jingoism. Okay, so in some of the cases, the digital public good, digital public infrastructure, some of the definitions are coming from us. So I think that is a very humbling stuff. Once again, with no jingoism, but in all humility, I think it's been a great opportunity to play a meaningful role in the global scene. Okay? So I'll also talk about other things which you should know. eGov Foundation is a foundation in Bangalore for 20 years. And then, at least in the Indian context, we talk of what is called Saraswati, Lakshmi and Durga. In the Navaratri time, you all will realize that you need an intellectual component, you need a money, you also need work. So 3 of us, between Nandan Nilekani, there's a typo, Shrikant Nadamuni and me, so this is our division of labor. Nandan puts the money, Shrikant does all the work, I do all the talking. Okay? And all the software solutions are open source, and there are 17 states which are using this Digit platform for delivering a whole bunch of municipal services. It started with collection of tax. How many of you are from Bangalore? Okay, quite a few of them, right? You all have paid BBMP tax, right? How much time it took? 3.5 minutes. Okay, so BBMP collects lots of money, couple of thousand crores, completely thanks to Digit software. So like that, there are at least some 20 towns which are doing it. But I think much more interesting is to kind of tell you about DIVOC. Okay. So DIVOC, some of you can realize, it is COVID reversed, and it is one of the digital infrastructure for verifiable open credentialing. So what happens is, when we started the vaccine distribution, so we actually have to ensure that vaccines are distributed in a particular way. And remember, we initially started with senior folks. Then we said people in the 20 to 40s. Then we went to the children, etc. So we want to ensure that the right people are getting the vaccination. We should be able to plan the vaccination. And much more important, we should be able to issue the distribution certificate. Because issuing the distribution certificate itself became a project. Because you needed it in so many places. You needed it in airports, you needed it in banks, you needed it in government, you needed it in the borders. So what happened was that DIVOC is a software tool and a software ecosystem through which this entire planning of the vaccination certificates or entire planning of the vaccination was done. And look at some of the stuff, right? We were doing 10,000 at some time. At the peak, we did 10 million a day. So obviously the kind of scalability which you need was remarkable. And it was a digital first. And it also provided a lot of data analytics. You know, some of you in Bangalore would have seen every day government departments will actually put how many people have been vaccinated, etc. That was something, that's a small stuff developed at IIIT Bangalore. Remember, all these things happened remotely. Nobody could get out of the house. But still we could do all that. And this itself was done. The first version was developed in days. It is not in weeks. It is not in months. It is not in years. Thanks to open source. But for open source, we wouldn't have been able to do. Okay? And it is one of the largest in India. Okay? So let me kind of take another 5 minutes. I have another 5 minutes? Okay, good. So I think open source is going many places. I want you to keep this, don't forget this, the broader context. Open courseware from MIT, many of you would have used this course, but just look at it. More than 1 billion views. Okay? Look at the Indian version of that, NPTEL, National Program on Technology Enabled Learning, done by IITs and IISc. 600 plus certification course in 22 disciplines. And this is one of the largest downloaded YouTube channel in the planet. Okay, so it's 56,000 hours of content in English, 12,000 hours translated into Indian languages. So it's happening. More interesting stuff. Some of you may not be familiar. This again happened, started with Bangalore. There is an open source drug discovery which was kind of funded by CSIR lab, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research Lab. See, those of you who are not familiar, there are 43 labs all under one banner called CSIR. And from 2008 onwards, they have been doing about $35 million have been pumped in, nearly 500 contributors. Go and read of it. So see, what happens is, drug discovery used to be $1 billion in 7 years. Over the years, it has come to 100 million or less to weeks. From 7 years, we have brought it to a couple of dozens of weeks. It's more like months. But for things like this to happen. And you heard ONDC yesterday. Okay, so I don't have to give a lot of it because, so it is interesting. The goal is to get 12 million of the shopkeepers, small time selling people, get the benefit of online. So they don't have to kind of get a software guy, do this, do that, etc., etc. So they just have to press a few buttons on the mobile phone and they are able to service online. Okay, I think that is the power of, and built on an interesting protocol called backend, which you can go and read. Okay, so I think what happens is we are kind of going, and let me not forget to mention, Maya OS will go into production in now, I think by end of the year. This will be the operating system used by all the Indian armed forces. So we are kind of slowly kind of getting there. So we are getting into, many other areas including education, assessment. We are really looking at, can we open source this whole process of assessment? A country of 1.4 billion people, everything you talk of is in few tens of millions, right? So you have to conduct JEE exams. And you see, planning the JEE exams, can it be done by open source? How do you get a new school into it? How do you get a new center into it? How do you distribute the hall tickets? All these things can actually be done through open source, Healthcare, we talked about vaccine distribution, but there are so many tests and so many health records. You can actually go and look up what the Indian government is doing in terms of health management, Land property, there are movements to actually standardize land property across the cities so that, it's all done by, in your DigiLocker, it can be there, etc. So we have come a long way, but by no means we have seen even 10% or even 5% of the true potential of open source for this country. So we still have to walk the 90-95%. So all that I would say is, I have some reasons to smile. I am not even starting to smile. And the homework for all of you is, you have to make me do a full smile. That is my request. Let me thank you, and any questions? Thank you.